We'll continue with the succession in the Mughal Empire. Just whatever problems you have, write it down, and after the chapter is completed, I'll revisit it.
What is inheritance? Inheritance, in terms of succession, is the passing on of property, titles, debts, rights and obligations on the death of an individual to the heir apparent. Who is an heir apparent? Heir apparent is the person who will inherit whatever is bequeathed to him. The rules of inheritance differ from one society to another and have evolved over a period of time. Based on gender, inheritance can be patrilineal, where the heir apparent is a male relative. If the heir apparent is a female, then it is called matrilineal. Within the gender, inheritance systems can widely differ. Let us look at two most popular forms of inheritance. Whether patrilineal or matrilineal, primogeniture is when the eldest inherits the parent's estate. Co-parcenary inheritance is when the inheritance has to be equally shared between all children. Let us look at the history of the Mughal rulers to understand what form of inheritance was practiced by them. The Mughals did not believe in the rule of primogeniture, where the eldest son received the complete kingdom from his father. They followed the Mughal and Timurid custom of co-parcenary inheritance, where the king divided his kingdom between all his sons. However, this form of inheritance was fraught with many struggles. Upon the death of Babur, Humayun divided the inheritance as per the will of his father by giving each brother a province. Yet he had to face the rebellion of his brother Kamran. Humayun's son Akbar had to face the revolt of his half-brother Mirza Hakim in the early years of his reign. In the later years of his life, Akbar had to face the revolt from his son Jahangir, as the latter revolted against his father to win over the throne. Jahangir's son Shah Jahan revolted against his father to win the throne in the last years of his life. A war of succession broke out for the throne of Shah Jahan even before his death. Aurangzeb was victorious. He killed his 3 brothers and imprisoned his father to win the throne. However, upon the death of Aurangzeb, history repeated itself, as his successors were once again embroiled in the war of succession. The Mughals were successful in establishing a vast empire. What were the factors that allowed them to become so successful? They led frequent campaigns against rulers who did not accept their authority. In some instances, their power was enhanced by entering into marriage alliances with powerful Rajput rulers. In other instances, they won over the confidence of the local rulers and chieftains. This was possible because of the careful balance between defeating but not humiliating their opponents. The kings that were defeated by the Mughals in war were honorably treated. The Mughals gave them their lands, or watan, back as assignments, or watan jagir. This policy of showing respect to the defeated enabled the Mughals to extend their influence over many kings and chieftains. But it was difficult to keep this balance all the time. The Maratha king Shivaji accepted to meet the Mughal emperor Aurangzeb in Agra after the Treaty of Purandar, by which he was forced to surrender a number of his forts. In the court at Agra, Shivaji was not accorded the respect due to a person of his rank. Infuriated Shivaji stormed out of the court. Aurangzeb ordered Shivaji to be arrested and put both him and his son under house arrest. Shivaji and his son managed to trick the guards and escaped to Raigad. Shivaji resumed his campaigns against the Mughals and was successful in recapturing some of the forts he had surrendered earlier. Which among the following factors
Okay, so do we have any questions? House arrest means nazar band kar dena. It means they are kept under their house. They are not allowed to leave their house. I do not know that, Arush, if there was any foreigner imprisoned by the Mughals, but Mughals did give grant to trading for East India Company, which eventually took over Indian administration. There was no big empire. Yes, the Rajputs were quite powerful, and there was no big empire which could compare itself to the Mughal Empire at that time. The Marathas later posed problems to them, but they were not that big or unified at that time. If there is any other question, just unmute your mic and ask. Anyone? Okay. I'll move ahead. मैं तुमसे बार बार कह रही हूँ अनम्यूट योर माइक एंड आस्क योर क्वेश्चंस आरुष.
Were there any Indian peoples with Mughal?
Mughals integrated themselves into India. They became Indian themselves. We cannot.
And then what did?
Yes.
And then what India did after the Mughal Empire finished?
Mughal Empire was finished by the British Empire. It was colonized by Britain. Tanaji was there at the time of Aurangzeb. Yes.
Ma'am, in Mughals. Ma'am, Aurangzeb.
Because that was the time of Shivaji. So the later period of Aurangzeb. Huh. Anything else? See, you have to understand that when we are talking about the Mughal Empire, they were not like some foreigners who ruled over us. They became a part of Indian society. They were the one that introduced a new kind of culture in India. They were not merely foreigners who came over and ruled us. They were not like mercenaries. They were not like there to kill or to plunder. जो अगर किसी ने जोधा अकबर मूवी देखी हो तो उसमें यही है that we, oh, the Akbar in that movie, of course it's a movie, but Akbar says that we are not here to plunder India, we are here to prosper India. So we cannot say that the Mughals were foreigners who ruled over us. They were basically, they introduced their new culture to our society. यहाँ पर इतने उसके remnants नहीं हैं, but if you go in UP, if you go to Agra and the cities that they built, you can definitely see the culture that they have left behind. जो आर्ट है, जो लिटरेचर है, जो म्यूजिक है, जो पेंटिंग्स हैं, architecture hai, all these things, the different kind of culture was brought into India by the Mughals. Although with the time their power decreased, the power was not there as much as we would have expected it to be, but then again they did well. Okay, so I will go back to the class edge now.
Mughal Emperor Akbar was known for his efficient and elaborate system of administration. Here is a scene from Emperor Akbar's period. Explore the elements on screen to test your knowledge and learn more about the period. Click each red square to learn more.
Did you know, during Akbar's rule, if crops failed due to flood or drought, peasants had to pay discounted revenue?
Don't I look marvelous? I helped the emperor by carrying textiles, spices, and indigo to China, Central Asia, and Europe for trade.
We are sent by Emperor Akbar as loans to poor peasants in times of need. How nice it is to help someone!
I am the Diwan, the financial officer of my Suba. One of my jobs is to collect taxes from the peasants.
On what basis was tax on crops fixed during Akbar's rule?
During Akbar's rule, individual crops were slotted into revenue circles with their own revenue rates and schedules. What was this revenue system called?
I am the town police commander. I help the Subadar in the administration of the province.
I am the military commander for my province. I help the Subadar in the administration of the province.
I am the minister in charge of religious and charitable patronage for my province. I help the Subadar in the administration of the province.
I am the military paymaster for my province. I help the Subadar in the administration of the province.
Hi, I'm Todarmal, one of the 9 jewels in Akbar's court. What is my position in Akbar's court?
I am a Mughal Subadar. What is the scope of my responsibility? Did you know each Mansabdar had to maintain a specified number of cavalrymen? The cavalrymen had to be registered and their horses branded in order to receive money from the government for their salaries. I am part of Emperor Akbar's Mansabdari system, which is based on the concept of Mansab. What does Mansab mean? Did you know Mansabdars receive their salaries in the form of revenues from the Jagirs given to them? A person who had a Jagir was called a Jagirdar. Identify the contents of the N-e-Akbari. Emperor Akbar is glad to meet you. Do you know the title of the book that tells you more about my rule?
Okay, so that was an interesting representation of all the things that were like in the rule of Emperor Akbar. I hope it makes you more clear about the contents that you have. Arush, I do not know the exact number, but the powerful ones were the 6 that we already discussed: Babur, Humayun, Akbar, Jahangir, Shah Jahan, and Aurangzeb. They are the major rulers. All other of them, they were like more of just for the name. They were rulers. They did not do anything much for the empire. They were not good rulers. So in case you forgetting something about this chapter, जो अभी हम लोगों ने representation देखा, जो illustration देखा, you can save that in your YouTube video. You can rewatch it again and again in case you are getting confused between things. Then it will give you a more clear picture of what all these definitions were. So is there anything that I need to cover again? अभी तक मैंने जितना पढ़ाया है, अगर उसमें कोई भी प्रॉब्लम है, कोई भी कंफ्यूजन है, आप पूछिए, और अदरवाइज आई विल मूव अहेड. Okay.
Akbar was a Mughal emperor who ruled a large part of the Indian subcontinent from 1556 to 1605. Let's take a look at the administrative policies that helped Akbar to maintain stability and peace in his empire. Much of the information about Akbar comes from the Akbarnama, a 3-volume book written by Abul Fazl. The last volume of the Akbarnama, called the Ain-e-Akbari, provides information on the emperor's administrative policies. Apart from the Mansabdari system used by many Mughal emperors, Akbar's administrative system had further well-defined roles and functions. Akbar's empire was divided into 15 provinces called Suba. Each Suba was governed by a Subedar. He carried out both political and military functions. He was responsible for maintaining peace and order in his Suba. He was helped by other officers like the Diwan, who was the financial officer of the Suba. The Diwan was the head of the revenue department in his Suba. The Faujdar was the military commander. He was responsible for the protection of his Suba. The Bakshi was the military paymaster. Sadr was the minister in charge of religious and charitable patronage. And the Kotwal was the police commander. He maintained law and order in his Suba. Thus, several officers worked together to run a Suba smoothly. Unlike other Mughal emperors, Akbar respected and encouraged all religions. At his Ibadat Khana in Fatehpur Sikri, priests and scholars from various religions were invited to discuss and debate on religious matters. Over time, Akbar increasingly promoted the idea of Sul-e-Kul, or universal peace. Through the concept of Sul-e-Kul, he strongly encouraged religious tolerance. On the basis of Sul-e-Kul, Akbar even tried to form a new faith called Deen-e-Ilahi, or Divine Faith, which combined major principles from different religions. Akbar also abolished unfair taxes payable by non-Muslims such as jizya and pilgrim tax. Due to these policies, which were based on harmony and equality of different religions, Akbar was given the title of Akbar the Great. Think about this and discuss.
Akbar was the most important emperor in all the 6 emperors. Yes. Anything else? Any other question? Anyone? If anybody has another question, you can just unmute your mic and ask.
Ma'am, Mirza Hakim was older than Akbar.
I am not sure. I can research if he was. I think he was. But I'll confirm anyway. He was born in 1553. And no, of course not. I got a little confused between who we are talking. He was born in 53 and Akbar was born in 42. No, he was 11 years younger than Akbar.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other question? Anyone? Jizya tax was basically a tax that Hindus had to pay for going to pilgrimage. तीर्थ यात्रा पे जाने के लिए they had to pay a special kind of tax to the Mughal Empire, which basically highlighted the differences in the religion policies. But Akbar thought that it was unjust and everybody should be treated equally despite their religion, so he abolished the tax. And Aurangzeb reintroduced the tax, and that is why he has been criticized in history. Yes, pilgrim tax, it was known as jizya or jizya. Anyone, do we have any other question?
Ma'am, there was some similarities in Sultan Muhammad Mirza and Mirza. Ma'am, what was that? Mirza Hakim.
Let me see who Sultan Muhammad Mirza was. I need to research a bit about it. I have never read about him, and just remind me someday about it.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Okay. Is there anything else you would like to ask? Jizya had been started, I think, at the time of Babur itself, but I am not sure. It was an old. Mirza Ghalib was a poet. He was not related to these people directly. Let me see who started jizya tax. Well, it was not exactly started in India. It was already a practice for other religion followers, but it was the practice was just carried forward in India क्योंकि वो शुरू से ऐसा होता था, and it started in India during 11th century, and jizya it expanded with the Delhi
Ma'am, I know.
Sultanate. Delhi Sultanate. हाँ बोलो.
Yes, ma'am.
बोलो.
Ma'am, from Qutbuddin. Ma'am, from Qutbuddin Aibak. He had
Qutbuddin
started.
Aibak. Basically, they brought the practice with themselves. It was not something that they invented by themselves. It was already a practice in the Central Asia, and they just started practicing that in India also. So it was just something that nobody bothered to discontinue. It was not like something new that was started in India. It started already in the Central Asia. Anything else? You can't say that Qutbuddin Aibak applied the jizya tax. You can say that the Delhi Sultanate brought the culture with them. That was already there. So let's move ahead. Okay, we can wait for this particular portion to start, and so that will be all for today's class. Thank you. There was not like that they counted people. They came with an army, then they converted people to their religion, then they became friends with some other people. So we can't say that नहीं उनके साथ 4,440 लोग आए थे. Definitely not. They had a big army. They captured Delhi. Then they started bringing more people from there, and it was a process. It was not like something that happened within a day. So that will be all for today's class. Thank you and Sai Ram.